All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Success at ASU conference that's hosted biannually by the International Students and Scholars Center at ASU. And today you're at the session right now for tips for applying to graduate schools. Today we're very honored to have three wonderful student panelists with us today, and they will be going to share their experiences and talk about what was it like for them to apply to graduate schools, not just at ASU, but at other schools as well. And please, feel free to share, to ask questions throughout this session. I have prepared some questions for us to get it started with, but I really, want to make it an interactive session. So please feel free to post questions in the chat, and I will, ask them on behalf of you to our panelists today. All right. All right, so here's our agenda for today. We'll have our panelists introduce themselves, and then I will kick us off with some prepared questions, and then feel free to ask questions throughout the session using chat, and then I'll pick some of the questions to ask during at the end of the session. All right, let me make sure that I have the chat box open. Okay, awesome. All right, let's get started with our panelist introduction. So, Carmen, can you introduce yourself first?
Hi, everyone. My name is Carmen Ortega. I'm originally from Spain, and on my last semester here at ASU, I had been here almost 4 years, and I'm pursuing a degree in exercise and nutritional sciences. And my background is all my education was performed back home, and I am a registered dietitian by training, but I'm kind of like a weird dietitian because I moved towards the exercise field, and I got my master's in physiology. And after quite a little bit, I fall in love with science and research, pursue that one as my career, and apply for ASU. It's a kind of like a funny story because I met a professor from ASU in a conference, and she was the one who encouraged me to actually apply for the program that I'm currently at. So I have a very different maybe experience from other people that they just like apply for it to ASU. I was kind of like invited or encouraged to apply to the program that I'm in. I can answer more questions later on.
Thank you. We have William next up.
Hi, everyone. My name is William Huawei Zhu. I'm very honored to be here with you guys today. So I'm from China, Guangzhou, China. It's where I was born and raised. I came to the US at 2012, attended ASU for my undergrad. I was in mechanical engineering. So I graduated in 2016, and I was working in the automotive industry for about 4 or 5 years. And then I was looking for a more higher degree in MBA sectors. So I applied for Thunderbird and then got a full scholarship. And then so I gave up my work, went back to school full time since 2019, about to graduate this May. So any more questions? Happy to answer for you guys in the later chat. Thank you.
Thank you, William. And last but not the least, we have Miriam.
Hi everyone, I'm glad that I'm here with you. So my name is Mariam. I'm originally from Iran. So I started my PhD in computer science here at ASU in 2018 after like 7 years of work experience. So I was like, out of school for 7, 8 years and then come back to school. So I'm currently working in a data analysis in my research. So I'm glad just, to be here. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
Thank you so much. So next, I would like to do a quick poll with the audience here. So if you could quickly go to the website slido.com, I'm going to put it in the chat. And then enter the event code here. And you should be able to see the website for you to put in your answer. So I just want to do a quick poll about kind of where you are today in terms of your graduate school application. So, are you thinking about applying to graduate school this year, in the future, or if you're not sure, we all would want to know. I think this will also help our panelists kind of best tailor their answers to your questions. Okay, so about half of you are applying to graduate schools this year. That's exciting. And some of you are not sure and still thinking about it. That's great as well. And hopefully our panelists today will be able to answer some of your questions. All right, let's go to our next question. So what program are you thinking about applying to? Is it a master's program, PhD program, or you're not sure yet? Okay, so it seems like the majority of you here are looking into a master's program at the moment. And a few of you are not sure, and then some of you are thinking about applying to a PhD. Okay, thank you for participating in the poll. And then we're going to start with our first question. So my first question for all of the panelists here is, could you briefly walk us through your process of applying to graduate schools? So some of the questions you can consider, also, did you complete your bachelor's or master's degree in another school, another country? I think, some of you talked about it in your introduction. And what made you decide to pursue and then apply for a graduate program in the US? And what, if you had a timeline that you still remember, what was that like? And when did you, generally start to prepare for all of your application materials?
I'll go first, so we maintain the order. Well, I mentioned these when I completed my bachelor's and my master's back in my home country, but it actually completed my bachelor's in one school and my master's in a completely different one. And I developed my master thesis in a different school. So I have experienced 3 different universities, all of them heavy on research. And I did, after my master's degree, a research internship for over almost 7 months in the UK. We have the opportunity in Europe that, I don't know if anybody in the audience is actually European, but we have this program which is called Erasmus, which allows to have experience abroad, but a very cheap price, and you get some money. It's not a lot, but they give you the opportunity to actually go to a different country. You can finish your master's degree, or you can even do like some research experience, and that's what I did. So as I said, I fell in love with the research process during my last year in my undergrad. And since then, I knew that I wanted to do something with research. And then it's when I apply, after talking to my mentor at the time, where I should pursue. She was like, well, you should actually pursue a master's degree. And if you actually enjoy the master's degree, then you will know that you can apply for a PhD program. So that's where I did. I ended up like applying for the master's degree, which was very focused on research. And I started applying for a master's degree my last year of undergrad in many different countries. I didn't only apply here in the back home. I actually applied in the US as well. I got the response from the US schools too late. I already accepted my master's in Spain. So that's why I pretty much stay in Europe. But I think it'll work out pretty nicely. After that, when I got the opportunity to like study abroad, for the PhD programs, I will say that I started applying, and I will like kind of like merge both last questions, like maybe almost 2 years in advance. While doing my master's, I was already looking for PhD programs. And then after my master's, I went to the UK. And then after the UK is when I came to the US, because I finished my master's 2016. I ended up in Phoenix at the end of 2017, but I was applying since, or looking for programs since 2015. So it has been a 2-year like process of getting the GRE, getting the TOEFL, and get used to the American like structure and requirements that sometimes each school has like different requirements. So you need to pay attention to those ones. That's my experience.
Thank you for sharing, Carmen. Anyone else would like to go?
Yeah, I can go after.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so like as I mentioned also in the introduction, so I completed my bachelor and master in my home country in Iran. So I was working for 7-8 years before joining the PhD program. So my experience with industry was like very good. But after a while, I thought that okay, I want to do more research. I want to know like more about like the edge technology and all of those stuff. So that made me to like decide to pursue a PhD. And the reason that I chose United States was like because I saw like we will have like different people from different cultures. So it's a good opportunity for me to also make friends from all over the world, get familiar with the cultures. Also, there are just a couple of like opportunities in the United States. There are plenty of like different tech companies here which you can just join them after like graduation and all of those things. And regarding the timeline, I think like you can say that like it depends on like how proficient you are in terms of like for example your English, are you very well like in English, so how long does it take for you to have the TOEFL test, become ready for the TOEFL test or a GRE test, or do you have like other documents ready? You need to spend some time preparing the personal statement. You also need some time to work and like find out who you want to work with, or which like kind of like research area are you interested at. So what I can say is just I put a link just like as a resource later, so you can just look at that one. But maybe a year is enough, and like in the first like months it's better for you just to like look at the researches and the programs and the professors who is doing what and which one is like interest you more. And then like toward like the end, you can just prepare and make ready the test results and the application documents and so on.
Okay, I will go. So, like I mentioned earlier, I finished my bachelor at ASU. So I know I see some Chinese name down here. I'm assuming those people are from China too. So as a student in China, I finished my high school in China. I have no idea about how school are in the US. So obviously, I'm assuming most of us kind of like this. We went through an agency, help us apply for school in the US, blah, blah, blah. That's how we kind of get into the bachelor degree. And then after I get done with my bachelor degree, I was working for a couple of years in the automotive industry, like I mentioned, but I was really into business and I have an engineering background. I want to have a higher degree, but maybe focus in business. So I would start looking for MBA program. At the time, because I have business here in Phoenix and I have been here for quite a while. So I was pretty much location is big decision maker for me. So I was thinking to stay in Phoenix. So I was only looking at ASU and Thunderbird at the time. This is the two big MBA school, and the ASU are more traditional. Thunderbird are more international. So I picked Thunderbird at the end, and then I actually applied for a master degree all on my own. I didn't use any agency or anything, which after I applied for school and went through all the process, I regret for using an agency for my undergrad because it's really not that hard. I guess if we're in China, our English is not that good. We don't understand much in English. Then it's different story. But after we went through the bachelor degree here in the U.S., applying for school, applying for master degree is really not that hard. My biggest suggestion to you guys is to start early. I got a full scholarship, and so a couple of suggestions I will give you guys. One is start early because the full scholarship program that I was in, they actually end really early. So they end. I think my decision was made in January, whereas the regular application deadline I forgot is either like March or April. But then the scholarship program deadline was a lot earlier than the regular program. So you wanted to apply early. You don't really have to have all your documents ready before you apply. It's like say, oh, I haven't done my GMAT. I'm still waiting for this document, that document. So I'll wait for everything and I'll apply. You don't really have to. You can just pretty much apply for the school, get your account started, put in some information, and then later on you can put in other document in. So that's my first suggestion, to start early. Second suggestion is talk to the people at the school. So at first, I didn't know about the scholarship program. I was talking to some students that are already at the school. I was, oh, okay, how do you like the school? What do you think about the program? Blah, blah, blah. And then that's how I get to know about the program. And then I start researching and I find out about it and I start applying. So a couple of suggestions, just apply early and get to know the people at the school. So they would help.
Thank you to the three of you for sharing. As we can see here, everyone had a very different story and kind of different experiences. So question number 2 here, some of you might have mentioned already, so you don't have to answer. So in addition to ASU, did you have to, did you apply to other schools as well? And what was that consideration process like, in terms of choosing schools, and how did you decide to come to ASU in the end?
I can take that one.
Go ahead.
So, yeah, definitely you need to apply for more than one school. If you're applying from abroad, if like situation is just from, for example, I applied from Iran, so the reason is that like there are a couple of other parameters and factors in in the application process that you don't know about. I mean, just it's not in your control. For example, what is like the university policy was like, is that a specific professor has like open position at that point of time, or do they have like enough money to fund you, and all of those things. So definitely apply for more than one school. So you can just what usually people aim is like they will aim for like very top schools, and then like some like average schools, and then some maybe like like have a kind of like backup plan, just apply for like less famous schools. So I also like applied for a couple of the schools, and the reason that I chose ASU was like that. Oh, one more thing, when you want to choose a school, pay attention to the culture of that school, also the city that school locates. For example, do you like to live in a big city, such as New York, Washington, or do you like to live in like smaller cities? What kind of weather do you like? Maybe like if you're not very like if you're not a person that is like quite well with the cold, so don't go to Minnesota or all like kind of like those places that are very cold. So like keep those in mind. Also look at the financial situation and whether like is there any scholarship available for schools from schools to you, or like usually all the schools have a kind of like fellowship or a scholarship for incoming students, which you can just apply for, or you can ask like some professors at the school to nominate you for them. So keep that in mind. It will help you financially. And also like pay attention to the culture of the school, whether it's a diverse or what is like the core value of that school. For example, I chose ASU because like I know that ASU is #1 in innovation, and I was like pursuing one of my goals is to become an entrepreneur. So it was very aligned with my goal, because like as we know, like innovation and creativeness is one of the like important factors of like entrepreneurship. So that was my experience with ASU.
I applied for a couple of other schools, but not necessarily in the US. I think that I applied to over 40 schools with PhD programs that I was interested in. And I did a lot of background check, as like Mariam was actually explaining. I think that you need to take into account where are you happy? Because at the end, I know that you're like applying for a school, but you will need to have a life outside school. And if you are not able to, I don't know, if you are, as she was explaining, if you're not a cold person, yeah, definitely don't go to Minnesota, because you're going to spend like with the snow above your knees for 9 months out of like 12. So I would not recommend to do that one. I consider ASU, as I explained, my situation was kind of particular because I actually met a professor where I was looking for PhD programs in a conference. But I chose ASU, and specifically my program, because they combine both exercise and nutrition. So I actually look for somebody who was doing the research that I'm like interested in, and that's why I chose ASU. Another one is that it was, I didn't really care much, and I regret about that one. I'm okay. I'm living in Phoenix, but I think it's really important to first look where the school is at, like the city that it's going to be. It's not the same to live in New York, that you need to pay rent in New York, or it's not the same thing to live, I don't know, in St. Louis, Missouri. So yeah, I applied to schools all over the world, like from Hong Kong to South Africa, New Zealand, and the US.
Thank you for sharing. I know William touched on this question. Okay, so I'm going to proceed to the next question. All right, so the next set of questions are about your application process. We would like to know what was the most challenging part of your application process. And if you have any tips, you can offer on your personal statement, or, preparing for standardized tests.
I can go for it. For me, the most challenging portion of the process is that I didn't know how the American system higher education worked, and it's completely different to the European one. There's way many documents that you need to like provide them, and you, as they were talking, that you have a like a deadline, so you need to go ahead and check the deadlines. I will like suggest to create a calendar and to make sure that you have all the paperwork that they're asking, and um, read very thoroughly through all those documents and requirements, because sometimes you miss one of the documents and then you are not able to apply. And depending on the program, they are pretty competitive, so they will not even going to review your application just because you miss one of the paperworks. For the personal statement, I honestly had a really intense TOEFL course. I took a one-on-one TOEFL course because I was coming back from the UK, so my English was good in terms of like speaking. But for the standardized test, I remember that with TOEFL, I actually prepare. I asked my teacher at the time to review my personal statements, and he was an American who was teaching English in Spain, so he had some input in terms of like, oh, like drafted this way or the other way. And but when they mean personal statement, be personal. They really like when you tell their like your story. And we all have, as international students, that we play a really, I mean, we are already bringing something new, and like tell your story, tell where you are coming from. If you are coming from a very particular place, like your town is special because they know how to, I don't know, they build something that it's we all are using. I will use those things, and I will always highlight it. Where you bringing to the table, why you are like the best choice for that program. And don't be shy to share, or oh, I think this is too personal, or no, not at all. I really think that they really really like when you get very personal, rather than taking a template from the internet and just like kind of filling the gaps from that template. Challenging is going to be everything, but I will say that it's more like getting adjusted to all the documents that they're asking. And I highly recommend to find somebody in the department on the website early on the process, because there's always some administrative like person or secretary. She or he will actually make your life way easier when you are completing the paperwork, because they are very like they are willing to help you. And if not, reach out to international like committees or international like offices, because there's always someone who is very responsive, and they will reply to your emails pretty quickly. And I think that you need to get sooner than rather than later with that person, so you can actually um, get like ready for that application process.
Thank you so much. These are great advice.
Okay, so we'll stay in the same order. I'll go. So some challenges in my application process. I think overall the application process was pretty easy. When I applied for Thunderbird, um, once I apply, pretty much there's like a mentor, like there's like a contact person at Thunderbird that they call me and they say, hey William, we received your applications. This is what you have submitted. We have reviewed it. This is what you're missing. So they kind of guide me through step by step, which made the process pretty easy. So I can't really think of any like hard challenges during the process. So I would say for the personal statement, I think for different school, it's very different. So like for their school, they really um, focus maybe on your academic backgrounds, what kind of research you have done. So for a business school, I guess they more focus on your business side of your personality or your story. So after my bachelor degree from 2016, I was doing I was kind of a entrepreneur business. I have my own business with my partners and all that stuff. So they're really into that part of story. I think a U.S. school, um, they like people being innovative. They like people who have entrepreneurship. They like people that are brave. They're willing to do things other people normally don't do. So develop a really a personal mm, some kind of story that's interesting that will be eye catching is quite important. And after you draft up your personal statement, uh, like she mentioned, you always want to have somebody else to proofread for you, make sure everything looks good. I think that's my suggestion.
Thank you, William.
Okay. So I think it depends, it depends on the like each one of us skills. So whether something is challenging for us or not. For example, I was not good at writing, so coming up with a like personal statement, crafting it, and writing it was just difficult for me because I was not good at storytelling or writing things. But maybe for some of you, like challenging part would be like to prepare for the standardized test. Also, I think you need to spend, if you are gonna like pursue a PhD, then you need to spend like a little more time on finding a good match with your like a good match as a PhD advisor. So keep in mind that that this is very important because that person is someone who you will work with for maybe 4 years, and you will ask for their referral and the recommendations afterward. So pick someone whose personality is aligned with your personality and whose type of like work is aligned with your type of work. That's important. Also, about like a personal statement, as like the other panelists mentioned, just make it like personalized. So just tell about your stories, tell about your experiences and what you can bring to the table, other than like using some general stuff. So I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you all so much. So this question is for our two PhD student and candidates here. So how did you find your current advisor? Did you reach out to them beforehand or after you've applied?
And I think this is a very important part, and I completely agree with Marian. You need to find your match. Sometimes you find somebody who is actually doing the research that you want to do, but they are not somebody that you are going to get along with. In the PhD, it's a very hard, stressful, I will describe it as a roller coaster process of your life. And you want to be with somebody that you are going to get along and that you will be able to tell, I'm very stressed out, I can make it to the deadline, or yes, I'm great, and you will like share your like success with them. So the way that I actually find my advisor is pretty much I look for the area that I wanted to do research on, and she was the only one. So I contacted her prior to actually applying, because they request in my application process list, they request me to choose an advisor during my application process. So you couldn't like just apply and then choose your mentor. Something that I will suggest is during that process, try to have an informal interview with them, so you can actually get to know them at least for a little bit, get some vibes, some energy from them. And I will ask if there's any graduate student, current graduate student in the lab, and if you could talk to them, because sometimes you will not know the dirty things unless you actually ask grad students. And I really think that when you ask current PhD students, they will be like very honest with you. If it's a horrible experience, they're going like through hell, or actually it's like, no, this advisor is great, I'm learning a lot. PhD students, they will tell you the truth. And if you can talk to postdocs, that's another option also to talk to and get some insight from the lab that the PI is not going to tell you.
Okay. I totally agree with what Carmen said. So it's very, like, as we mentioned, it's very important to have a good PhD advisor. So there are two strategies. Like, you can just pick your advisor, like, before applying, or by contacting to their like professors and talking like to their students, and also having an informal interview with them. The other approach is like, you can apply to school, you can get admitted, and just and after the first year, so you're just talking to different people here, and then you can choose your advisor. So what happened for me was I talked to someone like before coming to school, and then started working with that person. But after a while, I realized that like we are not aligned with each other. Our research interests are not like the same. So I like politely quitted his like group and joined another group, which is like totally possible, and it's not like it's totally okay. So one more thing I wanted to mention is that uh, just search a little bit about like that professor if you're gonna like like send an email to them like beforehand. So search a little bit about them, and don't send some generic like emails. Make it personalized. At least read a couple of papers of that specific person and point out something, and just show them that we are really interested in their research, and you did some like previous like just studies about them. Don't shoot them in a general email. Sometimes it happens that even we forgot like to change the professor's name, so we are just sending an email to someone else with someone else's name. So which is like it's not good. It's funny, but not good. So yeah, if you have any questions, just you can unmute and ask the question, or you can just post it in the chat so we can just look at it and answer your questions.
All right, that brings us to our Q&A time. We don't have a lot of time left here, so if you have any questions, please, ask in the chat or unmute yourself. You can raise your hand and then I will call your name. I did receive one question from a private message. So this student asks, when you're applying to PhD programs, do you always have to have a research topic ready?
Well, I can take that one. Or Carmen, you can go.
No, go Mary, go ahead. No worries.
So it is not, like it depends. If you're, you know exactly what you want to work on, and you have your specific such, that Carmen was like specific. She knew that like what she wanted to do, so she searched for exactly that like topic. So sometimes you don't know exactly, you are very broad. For example, you know that you want to work on the like AI and machine learning, but you're not very specific in terms of like what exactly or what application you want to work on. So like then that's fine. You can just like look around, and as I mentioned, just read a couple of papers of that professor and just reach out to them if it is interesting for you. Or you can just mention that the general that you're okay. For example, you are interested in working in machine learning or AI, but you're not quite sure what the application you want to work on. So that's totally fine. You don't need to like specify everything in all the details at the time that you're applying.
You don't need to know the details, but my question will be why you are doing a PhD, why you are pursuing a PhD, and why you're pursuing that specific PhD. I think that you should know that answer before like engaging or applying to a PhD program. You will be able always to switch and to discover new things. But I really think that once you get into a PhD, you should be actually knowing it. Like in my case, I'm doing exercise and nutrition, but I'm focusing on gut microbiome. So it's nothing related to like what you will think. At the end, I end up like doing a lot of microbiology. But my question to you is like, I knew that I wanted to do gut microbiome because I have that previous experience with research, and that one helped me to tailor my path. So I wouldn't like, it's just, oh, I want to pursue a PhD. I think that you need to know a little bit more about why you are pursuing that one. I say this because I experience with colleagues that they just apply for grad school because they don't know what else to do, and they don't want to like, they like to study. And I don't think the PhD program should be for do that one. Like there must be a purpose to get those credentials. If you want to work and be an entrepreneur but provide that expertise, like that's great. If you want to still be in academia, awesome. But you need to know like more or less, even though you may change during the program, that like goal. But I highly recommend to know a little bit why you want to do that one. And I think that will help you to answer why and what you want to do in the program.
Thank you so much. So because we're out of time, I would just want to ask one last question to all of you. If you could go through this process again, what would you have done differently?
I will talk to somebody in the lab that I was applying for. Definitely. Get more insight from the place that I was going to go.
I would say I will start even earlier. There's never too early to start. I think that the earlier you can start, the more prepared you are. So
Yeah, mine also is I would have started earlier. And one more thing that I remember to say that you can create a Excel sheet and keep track of everything. It's very important to keep track because it's just a lot of schools you're gonna apply or a lot of documents. Each one of them needs different documents. So create an Excel sheet. Just write down the requirements and the deadlines, and keep track of what you're doing there. That helps a lot.
All right, so we have some resources here. I will email this out to everyone who have attended today, so you don't have to, take all the notes. Sorry, let me update this. Okay. Here, sorry, my computer is a little slow today. So all of our panelists have shared their LinkedIn address. But I will also be sending this out to everyone. So, you don't have to here, write them down or anything. That concludes our session for today. Thank you so much for attending our session. And I would like to thank our wonderful panelists again for taking your time to share your experiences and tips with us. I am going to send the rest of the conference agenda in the chat, so feel free to stay around and participate in other sessions after this one. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead of you. All right, bye everyone. Thank you. Thank you all.